In a story that is surprising to no one, Joe Biden has landed in Kiev for a surprise visit. After previously stating he had no intention of visiting East Palestine, Ohio, where a toxic chemical spill is negatively impacting the lives in the immediate of about 5,000 American citizens, and there is a real threat to the farmland and the water table that could affect millions more. But guess who is going to East Palestine? Guess who actually said they were going to go and visit the American people? Man, it's Donald Trump. I can't say I'm surprised the man's running for president and he wants to win. Joe Biden is a shill for the establishment and cares more about Ukraine than he does about these United States. And I'll tell you this, shout out to Benny Johnson, who quite literally is doing more for the people of East Palestine than the U.S. government is. Whether it's for a viral video or for whatever, he gave 20 grand in cash to the people who lived around the train wreck. You know, we can't even get, we had that video of Mr. Beast curing blindness. We can't even get our own president to try and make a viral campaign video by helping these people. He goes to Ukraine and ignores them. You know, I'll tell you the way I see it and why this matters to me. The first thing I'll say is it really is tough sometimes to even want to talk about this because we know, we get it. It's pathetic. But it's you know, my ethos, the way I live is if I have a bunch of roommates and we're all pitching in together for the bills, if you screw those people over and they stop pitching in for the bills, then well, you can't pay the bills. You know what I mean? So Joe Biden is of the mind, and these Democrats are, that they can screw you over, ignore you at your darkest moment, and you will keep paying the bills. And you know what? Maybe they're right. I mean, the IRS certainly can take your money at gunpoint. They got those new IRS agents, so maybe he just doesn't care. But it's not really about the bills. It's about support and confidence in the system, and they don't care. They don't care if your roommates threaten to move out. They don't care if they threaten to kick you out. They're like, we are going to extract everything we can. Now that we have this apartment and we got the cool balcony, we're going to invite all our friends from across the street to come hang out. It's basically what it is. Biden lands in Kiev for a surprise visit. It's remarkable. Right now, you've had this over the past weekend. MAGA trashes Biden's Ohio response as Trump announces East Palestine visit. Could he not have just flown in for the day? He makes a surprise visit to Kiev instead. People there are pissed. Where's Buttigieg? I'll tell you where. The administration doesn't care about you. And what do? You know, I got to tell you, my friends, I think ballot harvesting is such a powerful tool in the arsenal of Democratic establishment politicians. They know they don't have to campaign anymore. And that's crazy, right? You know, I've seen in the movies and these old videos of the old-timey election campaigns, you'd have to come out to an area, speak to a crowd and tell them why to vote for you. And that was it. Maybe the newspaper would say something about you if you were lucky, but if they didn't, for the longest time, politics worked that way. Get access to the radio, get access to TV, etc., and you get your name out there better than anybody else. Now, it doesn't even matter. Nobody even needs to see Biden's face. They just need activists to knock on your door and say, check the Biden box. That's why they've abandoned you in eastern Ohio. That's why they've abandoned you in western Pennsylvania. And that's why people in West Virginia are really, really angry, because the western part of West Virginia now has to deal with toxic chemical spills moving downriver into our state because the federal government won't do their job and they don't care. And I got to tell you, man, I talked to a lot of people about, you know, we had Ann Coulter on the show on Friday, and she was talking about federalism and republicanism and how it's good that different states have different laws and all that stuff. And I'm like, not if you can't enforce action between the two of them, right? If one state has a big chemical spill and they do nothing to stop it from heading into another state, it's like, oh, well, you know, that's federalism. Okay, no, the federal government is supposed to exist to do something about that. They're not. Otherwise, what happens is what? West Virginia builds a dam to block the toxic sludge. Well, that would probably cut off their reservoir, but something would happen and there's going to be action taken. You can't just have one state violate the territory of another state. A better example, I suppose, would be like if Ohio diverted the river away from West Virginia and like cut off their water supply. That's happening with the Nile in Africa because the whole thing just runs straight up to Egypt. And then you got people basically doing stuff in the river that's nasty, and then it flows into Egypt, and well, you get what you get. Here's a story from the Daily Mail. Biden lands in Kiev for surprise visit for first anniversary of Russia's invasion. President tells Putin his war is failing and gives Zelensky $500 million more in new weapons. I'll love it. $500 million. That's actually really cool that, it's actually a really good thing that Joe Biden didn't go to East Palestine because he could have got sick from all the toxic water, and he gave them $500 million. And Benny Johnson gives them, is this video going to play? Let me refresh it. Benny Johnson gives them $20,000. That's it. He made a video where he shows up and he finds the 20 homes surrounding the crash and he gives them each $1,000. I'm gonna give a shout out to Hassan Piker. Why is it that it's got to be some commentator, media personality to come and provide some kind of help to these people? And $1,000 ain't going to cut it. I mean, their property could be worthless now. Who's going to buy that house? You're talking about somebody who might own a house worth $100,000, $200,000 in this area. Now it's worth zero because no one will buy it. And the best we get is Benny Johnson giving $20,000. No. And props and shout out to Benny Johnson. I don't know. I don't think the guy's got the resources to actually give all the residents a substantial amount of money. If you wanted to give the residents, 5,000 residents, $1,000 each, you'd need $5 million. So what are you going to do for all these people whose lives are destroyed? Because it ain't just these homes surrounding the crash. No. I'll tell you what they'll do. They will send $500 million. $500 million. That's remarkable. They could have given 500,000 to the citizens of, am I doing the math? No, I'm doing the math wrong. So you got 5,000 residents, $100,000. Is that it? Everybody get 100,000? I don't know. I'm going to make fun of my math. I'm not doing it on top of my head. The point is, with 20 grand, he gave each of them $1,000. And it'd be $5 million to give everybody $1,000. Yeah, so it'd be like 100,000 if Biden, would it be 100,000? Yeah. If it was 500 people, it'd be $1 million each. But I'm not surprised. Are you surprised? Let me tell you guys the challenge with all this stuff. I wake up in the morning and I hear the news that Joe Biden has flown to Kiev. He's getting all this praise, heaps of praise. They're like, he walked through the streets during air raid sirens. We are not Ukraine. The people of Ukraine are not paying taxes to this country. The people of Ukraine do not vote in this country. So what is it about the ideology of people like Joe Biden that Ukraine gets more from us than our own citizens? No, let's be serious. Flint water supply. Why couldn't they fix that? Don't care. They cared more about Afghanistan and Iraq. Why can't, or I should say military bases in Europe. Why can't they do anything about East Palestine? Why can't they even pretend? Why can't they pretend to care? Where's Pete Buttigieg? Ohio residents voice frustrations after toxic train derailment. I don't know. Your guess is as good as me, said the East Palestine mayor. It's up to Benny Johnson? Benny? He's the guy who decides to go and do what he can? Man, I wish the guy had more money. I got to be honest. I'd rather have Benny as president. Most of you probably agree. At the very least, he did something. It's remarkable that we live in a country where the president prioritizes other countries over ours. East Palestine Mayor Trent Conaway fielded questions from residents during the meeting, noting Tuesday's comments from White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre were the only acknowledgement he had seen from the Biden administration. Where is Buttigieg? Where's he at? Asked one resident, referring to the Biden administration's transportation secretary. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine, Conaway replied. So that was a typo up top. Fix that at timcast.com. EPA is working hand in glove with the state of Ohio. And we think that's really important. The administration has been in close touch with local officials to ensure they have what they need and that their needs are being met, Jean-Pierre said. They've been on the ground on site since February 4th. They are clearly, look. There's a meme going around showing a cow, and it's like bad for the environment, bad for the air. And then it shows East Palestine, and it's like totally safe to breathe. The water's fine. The remarkable thing with this is that where are the environmental activists? Where's, Greta Thunberg to come out and be like, Joe Biden, how dare you? Where is she? She didn't care. Because he's fake. It's all fake. It's all for show. There are people who live in the plastic reality of TV. And I'm glad to say that reality seems to be imploding on itself. With the Grammys collapsing and other establishment garbage shows, with Gutfeld getting better ratings than Colbert, the machine is collapsing in on itself. Don Lemon's about to get fired. Good. The narrative machine of the plastic reality where they sell you, they sell your life, they sell your everything about you to foreign countries. It's all going away. So good. Quote, I know there have been questions about the water. EPA will continue to support Ohio EPA surface and groundwater sampling efforts to ensure drinking water is indeed safe. Like every Ohioan, I am horrified by the Norfolk Southern train crash in East Palestine and the images we've seen coming from Northeast Ohio, J.D. Vance wrote in a Monday statement. So far, we've been told the air and drinking water tests performed by the state and federal government, the EPA, the Ohio National Guard, and Norfolk Southern have been encouraging. We continue to monitor environmental reports from multiple agencies about the quality of the air and water in the region. There are some viral videos. I have not verified these, so take it with a grain of salt. One shows a car covered in some kind of white residue, and people are saying it's from acid rain driving through the area. I don't know that for sure. The car could be a picture of anything. Someone could have sprayed salt on it or something like that. But it's streaking, and in some parts seem to be stripping paint off of part of the car. There's another video of someone who made coffee. And when they pour their milk into the coffee, it starts bubbling for a brief second. And they're like, I'm not going to drink this. I don't know if that's real either. Why would that happen? People lie on the internet. So I just don't know for sure. The only thing I'd really say is we know for a fact that what's happening there is bad. And we know for a fact that Biden is not going to show up. They're not going to help these people. And in fact, the tax money paid by these people. Now, don't get me wrong. I understand modern monetary policy, but hypothetically, or I shouldn't say hypothetically, but technically, your tax dollars are extracted from you. Your savings are devalued so that the U.S. government can print money and send $500 million to Ukraine, a country most Americans couldn't find on a map. And I'm not saying that to insult Americans' intelligence. I'm saying they don't care. Ukraine has nothing to do with us. We are not Ukraine. So why? Well, perhaps you can call it the United States being worn like a skin suit by psychotic despots who care more about global conquest and manipulation than they do about what this country is supposed to be. And I suppose that's the reality. Most of you probably already know that. Is this a country of, for, and by the people? It probably has not been in a long time, maybe since 1913. When the Federal Reserve comes around and they can start extracting your buying power, tricking you, you put $100 in the bank. Let me tell you a story, man. Viral story about a family that found $50,000. I think it was $50,000 in a shoebox in an attic that their grandfather had stashed. The only problem was when their grandfather stashed it, it was worth 10 times more. The $50K had the buying power of $500. If he had bought gold or something else, could have retained the value. The cash became worthless. That's what they do. But you know what? Most people don't know. They don't care. Nobody sits around complaining, watching the grass grow. The grass just grows. And then one day you come outside and you go, man, I got to mow the lawn. You're not sitting there going, stop growing. I got to mow you. That's the thing about money. As it devalues slowly over time, it happens so slowly you don't notice or care. I mean, eventually there are hiccups, there are jumps, and you'll notice the prices skyrocket. You go to the grocery store, and we've seen inflation so bad over the past year or two that people actually did start to notice. They started to notice that there were no eggs. They started to notice the eggs that were there cost $6. $6. That's crazy. But don't worry. They'll keep mass printing money. They'll keep extracting from your savings to send to foreign countries you don't care about. And then when there is a massive disaster, a man-made disaster in your neighborhood, it's going to be up to Benny Johnson to come and help you out. And the sad thing is, dude could only help out some people. Donald Trump's planning on going. Trump announces East Palestine visit. Former President Trump is heading to East Palestine next week. Biden has announced no such plan. Says everything. You know what's funny about it is it's clearly a political opportunity. The people who are going to be voting for the president are going to be looking at what these people can do for them, not Ukraine. Of the crazy liberals who support Ukraine, what does Joe Biden get by doing this tour? He already had their vote. What you get with this, with Donald Trump going to East Palestine, moderate individuals and independents who don't like the guy being like, look, man, I'll tell you, I'll say this. I'll tell you my personal thoughts. I like Ukraine a lot. I think it's a great place. Fun to visit. I enjoyed my time there. I know people there. I have friends there. It's sad what's happening, and I think it sucks and needs to stop. But I don't see why we're involved in the first place. And in fact, I believe it's our involvement that led to what's going on. Now, I do think it's fair to point out a lot of people have said to me, we have a treaty. This is true. We have a treaty with Ukraine going way back to the fall of the Soviet Union that if they gave up the nukes that were in their country, we would come to their aid if they were ever attacked. So I do understand that. I do. I just think this is part of the entire policy of the U.S. that has been this expansionist, interventionist system. And I do not agree with it as a whole. I can understand there may be some obligations. It's a fair point. As a nation, are we going to be true to our word? But I think the problem is the war started because of U.S. involvement in Ukraine with things like Burisma, with Gazprom, Nord Stream, all of these things, this energy conflict. The U.S. is trying to strangle out Russia, get them to fall in line and do as we want. But Russia is massive and powerful, and they don't want to be at the under the boot of the West. So now we're hearing, what is it? Zelensky saying that if Putin allies with China, there will be a world war. For you, dude? It's remarkable. I shouted out Hassan because he made that video talking about Mr. Beast. But in my video that he was responding to, I said we shouldn't be spending $100 billion in Ukraine. We should GTFO. And Hassan's only response was to laugh, and then be like, bro really just said, you're on your own, dude. You're on your own. Yes, literally, I did. And it's like, I've been to Ukraine several times. I've seen the toppled statue of Lenin. I was there when the protests first started, which led to the ousting of Yanukovych. And yeah, we have never been given a real justification for why the U.S. is involved. This is what they do. They hate us for our freedoms. We're going to call them freedom fries. Hey, they're mad about our freedoms. I don't know. I kind of feel like they were mad that a foreign military came into their country to alter their culture and then started building a nation and imposing their will. I got to tell you how the Taliban runs things. I ain't a big fan of it, to be completely honest. But I ain't surprised that when a military invades a country, a bunch of people start fighting back. And then in the end, Joe Biden surrenders everything. If they wanted a nation build, they could have left in place the structures that they built, but they didn't want to. They didn't want to. And here's what I kind of think about all this. We had, we had Sarah Higdon on the show. I believe was logistics in the Army. I could be getting that wrong. And anybody who looks at, and what we talked about was anybody who looks at a map knows that the reason we invaded Iraq and Afghanistan was not because Saddam Hussein or the Taliban or terrorists. It was to set up a pincer attack on Iran. We have military bases surrounding Iran. That's right. You have Iraq, Afghanistan, Iran right in the middle. And it has long been the policy of the U.S. to try and brag. And the U.S. has bragged about how they want to take Iran. John Bolton famously said during the Trump administration, this time next year, we will be celebrating in Tehran. That's just insane. Now, ultimately, it all falls apart. Why? Because Russia becomes a bigger threat. Now there's war in Ukraine. We cannot expand in the Middle East and go to war in Iran if we don't have access to the energy that we need. And Europe is struggling right now because of Russia. Russia sells natural gas as they're allowed to. They sell it at a premium through Ukraine and Gazprom and Nord Stream. Now we got the report from Seymour Hersh that apparently it was the U.S. CIA working with, I believe, Norway that sabotaged the Nord Stream pipeline, which makes the most sense. The stupidest thing in the world was when the UK, I think the West comes out and they're like, Russia blew up their own pipeline. It's like, why would they do that? Why would they not just turn off their own pipeline? All right. Suppose you could argue it's an elaborate false flag attack to be like, help, we're under attack. But it really just makes more sense that the West destroys the pipeline so that these nations in Europe are forced to go through our energy machine. If Russia decides to defy the petrodollar, as Saudi Arabia basically already is, well, therein lies the big problem for the U.S. We maintain global order by forcing people to use the U.S. dollars for everything. And that's why we're sending money to Ukraine. And that's why we send money to Pakistan for gender studies, $10 million. $10 million bucks. Because the idea is we give them the money and they say, awesome, I've got the money. And then when someone else comes around and says, I'm going to sell my service, they say the only thing we have is US dollars. But hey, US dollars are good for it. And they say, okay. The US does this to build confidence in the petrodollar, to maintain confidence. And I know that these people sit back and they're thinking that if we had our way, if we stopped the war machine and focused more on our people, our economy would collapse because we don't produce things here anymore. This is bad for the country. There is no luxury. There is nothing good for the American people. We don't have to work as much. Okay, then people become morbidly obese, our culture decays, and then we start falling apart. People need purpose. Life is about balance, yin yang. You can't just have sugars and fats. You got to eat your vegetables. And you got to eat more of your vegetables. We have become a nation poisoned on the gluttony of the petrodollar. And thus, you can see it reflected everywhere. The military machine addicted to blowing up crap so that it can force people to use the US dollar. The American people who are so used to cheap food and cheap goods, they have nothing else to do but watch karaoke contests on national TV and then gorge themselves. How about this? How about we stop doing all of these things? We get back to purpose and hard work, and then make sure that Americans have to actually do a little bit more work, maybe manufacture things. We'll be healthier for it mentally and physically. But for now, I can only tell you this ain't living. This country is sick. We have this culture war. We have a president who doesn't care about our cities, and this is what happens when you live in gluttony. So vote for Joe Biden again, I guess, if you really want to help Ukraine. But if you're an American citizen, I suppose Trump, for the time being, is the only one who actually cares, aside from Benny Johnson. Shout out, Benny. Yeah, he sent me the video, and I saw it, and I was like, I can't believe it, man. I got to be honest. I can't believe it. I can believe that Benny Johnson went out and gave the residents $1,000 each. And it's great to see. I hope those people have at least a night out and a good time. But it ain't going to solve the problem of the fact their properties become worthless. So I can't say I'm surprised that the federal government offered them, what did they offer them, $5 or something? Some people sign this contract, will give you $100, something like that. Thanks, Joe Biden. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.